Smart for 2 versus Mercedes. Who do you think has a better chance of surviving? In a car accident, the driver of a brand new Mercedes-Benz S-Class, or the tiny Smart for 2? Personally, I think the Smart doesn't stand a chance. If you didn't know, this car manufacturer makes the smallest cars in the world. But you'll be absolutely shocked when you see the results of this amazing crash test. If you look closely, you can notice that the Mercedes is about twice the size of the Smart. And not only that, it's also twice as heavy. So everyone expects this little car to be swept away as if it were up against a freight train. But when the cars accelerate and meet in a head-on collision, something unexpected happens. Yes, the Smart sustained significant damage, but its rigid frame and thoughtful design allowed the passenger compartment to remain intact. Instead of crumpling like a paper cup, the Smart is thrown back from the impact, minimizing the effect on the passengers. The Mercedes, of course, performs better, but it's important to note that the result for the Smart was remarkable. Its compact size and lightness allowed the car to effectively bounce off the impact, rather than absorb all the energy of the collision. Why is the Smart not as simple as it seems? The point is that Daimler has developed a unique safety system for its microcars. At the core of the design is the rigid Tridion safety cell, which protects passengers in a collision. Combined with crumple zones that absorb part of the impact energy, this allows the Smart to perform well even in serious accidents. However, it is still important to remember that despite the strength of the design, size matters. Unfortunately, the dummies in the Smart experienced very severe G-forces, so anyone in the car at the time of the accident would not have been able to avoid injuries. The fact is that in real accidents, the small weight and compact dimensions make cars more vulnerable, especially in collisions with larger vehicles at high speeds. Tesla, Cybertruck. Well, it's time to move on to the exclusive. Today, I have prepared something amazing just for you, namely, a crash test of the famous and highly talked about Tesla Cybertruck. Yes, this car was released quite recently, and it cost an enormous amount of money. But companies that test car safety are willing to do anything to test any car, even spend several $100,000. So, how did this car perform in the crash test? Surely you've heard from Elon Musk that his new vehicle will be made entirely of metal. It was supposed to be bulletproof, ultra-protected, and very powerful. No plastic bumpers or fenders for you. Plus, the design is quite futuristic. And at the same time, it is a huge car, which gives it even more chances to do well. Crash test. But what is the reality? In reality, things aren't as rosy as one would hope. During testing, it was found that due to the rigidity of the body, the Cybertruck lacks traditional crumple zones. This can make the impact harsher for passengers, as the collision energy is transferred to them. Unlike regular cars that crumple and absorb the impact energy, the Cybertruck behaves differently. In one of the crash tests, during a frontal collision at a speed of 64 kilometers per hour, the body was practically undamaged. But the dummies inside experienced significant stress on the spine and chest. One of the rollover tests. The vehicle performed quite well. Thanks to the battery located in the floor, the car has a low center of gravity, making it quite difficult to roll over. But if you do manage to, problems may arise. The thing is, the roof of the Cybertruck is not the strongest. Due to its massive weight, it can deform in an accident. Overall, you need to be cautious when driving this vehicle. And what about other types of accidents? The side impact crash test showed that the car's body is very, very strong. But this is more of a disadvantage than an advantage. The thing is, the Cybertruck practically lacks crumple zones that help absorb the kinetic energy of an impact. And because of this, while the car itself may not suffer, the dummies inside experience enormous stress. In some scenarios, the driver might even suffer broken limbs. So much for the touted safety and durability. By the way, regarding the issue of crumple zones, debates online have been going on for a very long time. Many mistakenly think that the stronger the body, the better. But in reality, that's not the case. Every modern car has special crumple zones. It's because of them that we don't get injured during an accident. However, because of this, the car itself suffers significantly. And in a serious accident, major repairs will be needed. Opponents argue that this is all done by marketers to make more money, and that older cars are much better in this regard. Is this really the case? Let me explain. Chevrolet Bel Air versus Chevrolet Malibu. And specifically to prove that modern cars are safe, in the USA they decided to crash a rare and very beautiful car. The Chevrolet Bel Air. Who was it up against? The boring, unattractive, most ordinary, and inexpensive Chevrolet Malibu. The difference between these cars is 50 years of automotive evolution. So who will stand and win in this clash? The answer is very simple. For good reason. Engineers have been earning their salaries all this time. Because at the moment of a head-on collision, it becomes clear that a modern car is much safer. The fact is, thanks to the special crumple zone, the dummies in the Chevrolet Malibu were almost unharmed. Yes, the car sustained serious damage. Most likely, it won't be possible to restore it after that. But just look at what happened to the vintage car. Big, made of iron, and seemingly very sturdy. The body should have withstood the collision. But in reality, because of all its rigidity, something happened that is worth fearing. The engine compartment withstood the direct collision and began to shift into the cabin. Because of this, the roof pillars, which were less sturdy than the frame rails, started to crumple. Literally, the entire engine bay moved inside the car. And what do you think? If the dummy were a living person, they would not have survived this accident. His legs would literally have been broken by the steering column and the firewall. He would have smashed his head against the steering wheel, which rose right up to his face. And even if he somehow miraculously avoided serious injuries, he wouldn't have been able to get out of the car without the help of rescuers. These are the results of a terrifying crash test. Do you still believe that the rigidity of the body will save you in an accident? Personally, I now understand why everyone criticizes the Tesla Cybertruck so much. Due to the lack of crumple zones, the car literally becomes a tin can, and the driver and passengers are like sardines in tomato sauce. It's worth considering safety before buying such a vehicle. The safest in the world is the Volvo XC90. You might ask me, what car then? Safe? What can you choose so you don't have to worry about your kids in the passenger seat? Here I can confidently tell you, go with Volvo. This brand is renowned for being literally obsessed with the safety of its cars. And this is not just talk, but the absolute truth. Just take a look at this video from Russia. A woman decided to conduct an extreme crash test with her new Volvo XC90. Granted, it wasn't planned, but that's beside the point. In short, she lost control of the vehicle while driving on a bridge. She skidded, crashed into the guardrail, and knocked it down. Yes, you heard right, the Volvo just knocked down a barrier that can withstand collisions with trucks. And that's just the beginning. After she broke through the barrier, the car flew off the bridge. Fortunately, it wasn't very high, and below her was a lifesaver in the form of an electric train. This lady fell from the bridge, punched a hole in the train, rolled onto the platform, and fell off it. And what do you think, after all that, how many fractures did she have? 1? 2? I was just shocked when I heard this story. Because the woman didn't have a single scratch. The car's safety features worked to the max, and no one was hurt. But I think this woman still had to see a doctor. At least, my nerves wouldn't withstand such an accident. And most importantly, don't think this is some kind of Photoshop or editing. This isn't even an advertisement. This is a real incident that happened to a completely ordinary woman. Crash test. Soviet GZ3110. And next, I would like to tell you about another amazing car, specifically about the crash test of the Soviet GZ203110. Why is that in Russia? Many continue to think that old Soviet cars are safe, comfortable, and generally much better than modern car manufacturing. But in reality, this is far from the truth, because we have already seen what happened during the crash test of an old American car. So what happened with this GZ? It's very simple. The car behaved roughly the same as that 1950s Chevrolet. During the collision, its engine compartment shifted significantly into the interior of the body. But here, credit must be given to the Soviet engineers. Their car turned out to be a bit sturdier. Such serious damage was avoided. However, the conclusions are still disappointing. Because the steering wheel rose sharply during the collision, the driver received a serious blow to the head. Moreover, due to the high G-forces, the necks of both the driver and the passenger were seriously injured. So, in an accident with this car, you will definitely sustain serious injuries. But, personally, what I disliked the most was the fact that the entire body literally split at the seams. The car's threshold split, and the door frame was deformed. What does all this mean for us, as regular car owners? It means that in the event of a more or less serious accident, getting out of the car on your own will be very difficult. And this is yet another criterion that is important to consider. Unfortunately, collisions do not always end with just deformation and injuries. Cars often catch fire, and if the doors are blocked, escaping from this furnace will be impossible. There you have it, old cars. Crash test against a pole. And another video from Russia. A local blogger decided to conduct his own crash tests, where he crashed cars into a pole. And personally, I think this is a very interesting topic. After all, in all these professional crash tests, no one has ever tried to replicate something like this. Namely, to launch a car sideways directly into a pole. Or rather, similar crash tests are conducted, but there are nuances. The thing is, the pros don't accelerate. The car is not accelerated enough, and most often the impact occurs on the pillar between the front and rear doors. And this blogger decided that it was necessary to hit directly on the door to see what would happen to the car and the driver. There is, however, one small problem. He didn't have professional telemetry and dummies. So it's difficult to fully assess the damage and injuries. And I would like to show you one of these crash tests, which I think is the most interesting. The thing is, it features the famous UZ vehicle. These cars are quite common, because a frame SUV for a small price will definitely be used. Popular. And as I mentioned before, safety depends on size and weight. But is that really the case? Take a look at this video. The car accelerates significantly and crashes into a pole. The speed, as you can see, is quite high. And at the moment of impact, the car literally knocks the pole off its base and brings it down. It might seem like an impressive result, but that's not the case. The thing is, the pole flew straight into the driver's door and penetrated it quite deeply. If there had been a person behind the wheel, they would have definitely sustained extremely serious injuries, because the driver's seat shifted almost to the center of the car. And when the car was examined from all sides, it became clear why this happened. The fact is, the frame rails, special metal beams that provide the car with extra strength, couldn't withstand the impact. All the kinetic energy from the speed first hit the roof and the threshold, and then reached the structural integrity of the body. And none of this helped. Although from the outside, it seems that the car didn't suffer much damage. What do you think about such crash tests? Write in the comments. Crash test against a moose? By the way, I completely forgot to tell you why Volvo produces the safest cars in the world. The fact is, this company has its own facility where they crash all their cars. In a variety of ways, while other car manufacturers turn to third-party organizations. So, the most interesting thing here is that most often, everyone tests cars in the most ordinary ways. But Volvo decided to stand out and conduct several amazing tests. And I would like to tell you about one of them, perhaps the most interesting one. Have you ever wondered what would happen to a car if it hit a moose? In fact, nothing good. Just Google moose accidents and you'll understand everything. Passenger cars literally look like they've been hit by a freight train. And where do such accidents most often occur? In countries with lots of forests and wild animals. And where is Volvo manufactured? In Sweden, precisely where there are a lot of forests and wild animals. Do you see where I'm going with this? Yes, Volvo decided to conduct a crash test of their car against the moose. No, don't worry, no one intentionally hit a poor animal. A very heavy dummy was used for this. And what were the results? Just take a look at these shots. The car crashes into the dummy at full speed, after which it flies off and hits the roof directly. The deformation is just terrible. It's as if another car crashed into it. And it's precisely these seemingly strange crash tests that have made Volvo the safest car brand in the world. Here, I would like to give credit. The safety is truly top-notch. Even at such a high speed, the driver did not sustain fatal injuries. Yes, the roof caved in, yes, he got hit on the head, but he definitely survived. And if it hadn't been a Volvo, things could have ended quite tragically. Crash tests for dog carriers. Did you know that car manufacturers care not only about our safety? In fact, Subaru conducted a separate crash test for dog carriers. Yes, you've heard right. This company decided to check which carriers are suitable for use in cars and how they would perform in an accident. So, during the test, animal mannequins were used. There wasn't an actual car, as the important thing was to understand which carrier could withstand the stress. Therefore, a special platform was used, which accelerated and decelerated quickly. And to give credit where it's due, now I'll be transporting my pet in a completely different carrier. For example, a regular fabric bag. It's often used to transport small pets because it can be easily folded and is quite lightweight. What happens to it during an accident? It doesn't protect the poor dog at all. The animal just flies out of the carrier. And what about plastic carriers? They also can't withstand sudden overloads, as the dog's body simply breaks through the walls. And what is the safest way to transport your four-legged friend? It turned out that it was said that the safest way is to transport them not on the back seat, but on a flat surface and securely fastened to the floor. In this case, a plastic carrier can withstand even the largest pets. However, attaching it to the back seat is not safe. And also, there are special steel carriers. They have performed quite well, so now I definitely know where I'll be transporting my friend. The most unsafe car in the world. By the way, I was just thinking, what is the most unsafe car in the world? After all, we have already highlighted the favorites. Volvo. Their cars are the most durable and safe. But in which car will you almost have no chance of surviving? So meet the Indian car Tata Nano. And these cars turned out to be very popular. What? The thing is, they were considered the cheapest in the world for a long time. And if something is cheap, it doesn't necessarily mean it will be of good quality. So the manufacturer decided not to think about safety. During a crash test at a low speed, we can see how much the front part of the car deforms. It literally folds like an accordion. And not only that, the seats. The passenger and driver are thrown forward towards the car's dashboard. The outcome of this accident is grim. 2 fatalities. And the scariest thing for me personally is that because of the price of these cars, well, a lot were sold. It seems like every second car in India is a Tata Nano. So, if you travel to India, be careful. Don't get into a taxi if this car comes to pick you up. Otherwise, in the slightest accident, you risk your life. Crash tests for trucks? Well, it's about time for me to wrap up my video. But before that, I would like to tell you about perhaps the most interesting crash tests of all. They are not as popular as passenger car tests, but they still deserve our attention. And I'm talking about truck crash tests. The company Scania is very popular and well-known worldwide. They produce some of the best tractors. And one of the criteria why everyone chooses their vehicles? Safety. Scania regularly conducts crash tests on their tractors to check how safe they really are. And I found one such video just for you. In this video, we can observe that in a head-on collision with a wall, the vehicle almost doesn't sustain serious damage. However, the driver will still experience significant G-forces. But thanks to the airbags, serious injuries can be avoided. And in the event that a car crashes into the tractor, the driver is not threatened at all. But here, it's more important to look at what happens to the car. And as you can see, it didn't suffer too much damage because the truck is not a wall and helped absorb some of the kinetic energy. But personally, I found it much more interesting to watch how the rollover test is conducted. The fact is, trucks quite often tip over onto their sides due to their enormous size. And here, Scania has taken care of the driver's safety. They added a side airbag, so even in a rollover, the person won't sustain serious injuries.